I had the opportunity and the blessing to facilitate several of the book study gatherings on Father John McNeill's power-filled book, Taking a Chance on God. So many people in the groups were engaged and really willing to open themselves up and to share their stories and their own journeys, and I am eternally grateful for that. As part of this study, we discussed various topics that were presented throughout the book. But if there was one thought or one action that really seemed to resonate with all the groups that met, that was the idea of hospitality. And what does hospitality look like to our community, to others in our faith community, and to the whole world? Father John speaks of what he calls the gay virtues of hospitality and compassion, but then expands his thoughts to say that the LGBT community is part of a larger community of virtue, which includes everyone, gay or straight, who seeks to practice virtues of hospitality and of compassion. Our groups discussed hospitality offered through MCCPBG, including the weekly food pantry, the social time in between and after the services, and the importance of making all people feel welcome in this space. How do we reach out to newcomers and share the hospitality of this church with them without scaring them off? And we shared our experiences, what it was like the first time we attended an MCC, and what that felt like to us. And we shared of times when we were able to offer compassion to others as an act of hospitality, and of times when that compassion was offered to us. And we shared of times when we saw the presence of Christ in another person and how that changed us. When we talked about other topics, we shared stories of how the AIDS crisis impacted lives and how so many of us in the group struggle to find God in the evil of AIDS, as you spoke about in your book, John. We discussed the idea of sex as play, and we can be aware of God's presence during these sexual experiences. And we were only a little uncomfortable about that, but we seemed to move on. So it was good to get it out there. The book study gave each person who attended an opportunity to reflect on their own spiritual journey and how that journey has directed their lives, and how so many now can see themselves as part of the whole creation in the way that they were created to be: lesbian, gay, transgendered, and even straight. We are all part of the creation that God called very good. But to be able to read this and to reflect on this positive affirmation with the sharing of our stories gave our groups an opportunity to create community and to offer encouragement to each other as we move on through our lives. Now, I know that several people didn't want these studies to end, myself included, and to know that Father John McNeill took such courageous steps by affirming the value of all people, particularly the gay and lesbian community, just left so many of us awestruck. So on behalf of the book study groups, John, I want to thank you for all that you have done for us. Your strength, your intellect, and even your humor encourage the group members to participate, to open themselves up to each other, and to recognize their own sacred value and the sacred value of everyone else. It's not an easy journey, but it's certainly a journey worth taking. So thank you, John. This book and all of your work has changed our lives and awakened us, opened our hearts, and has caused the people of this church to take a chance on God. Thank you.
I also had the opportunity to work with and share the book study with members of this community, and as Ann said, it's a powerful experience, and thank you all for sharing. But thank you, Father John, and thank you, Charlie, for being John's partner in life. It is my honor to celebrate you today with the community of MCCPB. You know, I remember my first meeting with Father John at Sunshine Cathedral. I mean, and many of you have come up to me and say, "Oh, is Father John coming today?" You know, and was so excited. But I remember when first being introduced, and I think I had to give him communion. I almost dropped it. It was like, I'm giving communion to Father John. And so many of you know that I'm very shy. But, you know, and seminary, and in part of what we do with our spiritual practice and discerning our call, one is asked to get a spiritual director. And so I asked Father John, I'm like, and he said yes. And I felt like Sally Field. He liked me, he really liked me. But when we first met, John, you asked me to work on a gratitude list, and so I did that, and I invite all of you to try that sometime as we go on our journey every day. But I was thinking of one now for you, John, and I want to thank you for your passionate and radical inclusivity and the integration of sexuality and spirituality. You have saved lives.
Yes.
Thank you for lifting up the LGBT community to open up to God's unconditional love, and that all of us, and we say all means all, have sacred value. Thank you for coming out of your silence at your loss to speak out in the early days of AIDS, where silence equaled death. Through your pain and struggle, we are here. Thank you for standing up to the church hierarchy, and that we are not intrinsically and morally evil, but we are children of a loving God. Thank you for being my mirror and inviting me to go deeper in my spiritual journey. Self-knowledge can give freedom. You modeled for me virtues of humility, honesty, clarity, authenticity, compassion, patience. Thank you for inviting me into understanding the importance of listening to God and to be comfortable in that silence. Thank you for talking the talk and walking the walk. You know, as I stand here, 58 years old, lesbian, adopted, recovering alcoholic, breast cancer survivor, former Roman Catholic, and currently a MCC clergy candidate, this has embodied and embraced my entire spiritual journey. And as we heard the awakening of all of us, we all have our stories. And to that, I'm so grateful for your gift to us. And so I want to read the last lines of Desiderata, and for you, John, and for all of us present here. Know that you are a child of the universe. No less than the trees and the stars, you have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God. Whatever you conceive God to be, and whatever your labors and aspirations, in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace with your soul. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. And we have a right to be here. Be cheerful. Strive to be happy. Namaste.
Reverend Leah, you didn't tell me there were going to be so many important people here. Hi, everyone. I am so humbled and in awe of being in your presence. I would just like to take a minute on expressing how important you've become in my life. I first picked up your book in the mid-90s, and at that time I was getting a master's degree in nursing, concentrating in LGBT health, and I frequently visited the gay section at Borders bookstore on Sunrise in Fort Lauderdale. And I was just browsing around and I came across your book. I had seen the title several times before, but I was never going to touch it. And for some reason or another, that day I picked up your book. I don't know why I did it, and I don't even remember I don't even know why I remember it to this day, but I remember it distinctly. I remember picking up your book, going home and thinking, why did I buy this book? But you know, aside from that, I read your book. And just to step back a bit, I want to just tell you a little bit about where I come from. And it's not a unique story, it's a story shared by many LGBT people across the world. But I was raised Roman Catholic by two rigid and devout Catholic parents in a small town in northeastern Vermont, just south of the Canadian border. My earliest church memory is of a time when I was serving Mass, and I just want this distinction, I was on the right side of the priest, which is like the most important. And on the right. And anyway, not that that means anything about, never mind. Anyway, and being on the right, you were the one that got to ring the bells during the consecration. So, and that was like, you know, I rang those bells too. But I remember this is the first religious memory I have, quite frankly. And the priest was going, this is my body, blah, 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 blah. Ring, 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 ring. And the ring, 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 was supposed to signify that the magic was happening. And then with the wine, you know, this is my blood. Ring, 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 ring. Magic happening. Well, you know what? I didn't see the magic. And it was for the first time that I was like, what? I don't understand. I don't believe in any of this. And in the thought following that, immediately following, is I'm going to burn forever in hell for thinking this. And I had these, and I remember these vivid images of me in hell, burning, flames scorching my flesh, living with blisters all over my body, and people screaming around me forever. I didn't know what eternity was, but I knew it was a very long time. So that was my first experience. Now I can't say I wasn't abused or anything like that, but today I recognize how that was such a formative thought for me in my spirituality or lack of spirituality. And I certainly never found any spirituality or thought of God in the years that I was being bullied and battered in this small town in northern Vermont. See, my biggest dreams and aspirations were to be a dancer on Broadway. You know, like the Rockettes. And so I was a very easy target. I was a very conspicuous target. And many people took aim at me for that. Boys, girls, men, women. And then there were those who just turned their back. And it was a very, very difficult life with that little community up in the mountains of northeastern Vermont in the 60s. And the only way I learned how to deal with it was to stuff everything and just pretend that nothing was bothering me. What? No, it's okay. I mean, that's how I learned to cope. I learned at a very early age to stuff my feelings. And, you know, and it was just, I would lie awake at night and my heart would be pounding, dreading the next day at school. I mean, it was that bad. I would sleep an hour and I would go to school just hoping that what's-his-face wasn't going to come out around the corner and hit me in the face. So that's the kind of childhood I had. And when I finally got out of Milton, Vermont, and moved here, my life pretty much completely changed. I moved here to South Florida with my whole family. And I came out like, wow, really quickly. And there was just, for those of you who have lived here for a long time, there used to be this disco on the corner of US 1 and Forsyth Boulevard called the Cabaret. Well, that's where I came out. And I came out, I walked into this bar, and there were drag queens, and there were balloons, and there was confetti, and they were playing do a little dance, make a little love on on the loudspeaker. Well, that was nirvana to me. I was home. And so, I went on and met the first love of my life there. And we moved to Boston, where I got a really good job, and my life settled, pretty well. I became pretty active in the LGBT kind of liberation movement at the time. And, I also noticed that I became very, very sensitive to social injustice. I mean, it just bothered me a lot. And so I found a new security. I was living in the gay ghetto, and working in a female-dominated profession, and then the epidemic hit. And when I say the epidemic, of course, I mean HIV. This was in 1984. I started doing work with HIV in 1984 as a volunteer, and then became a full-time professional in 1986, and have been dealing with HIV ever since. And what I experienced at that time was death, despair, anger, rage, all of those kinds of things. Now, I was not ready for that. And because I was one of the first full-time professionals in Boston who was dealing with the AIDS epidemic, it was just, it just poured on me very, very easily. My first lover died, the man that I met in the cabaret. 6 months later, my best friend died, and the whole circle of friends died. The reason I'm going through this is to help set the stage for, I am spiritually vacant. I didn't even know what spirituality was. And so I did what I always did. I stuffed it. I just kept going on, pretending that really nothing was the matter. Meanwhile experiencing rage. Let's forward back. Let's go up now. And to the point where I found your book. And that, when I first read that book, I have to tell you that I thought, wow, after all of this that I experienced, maybe there is something in this spirituality stuff. Because you talked about, like Marian and Anne said, compassion and hospitality and letting go of fear, all of those things which were very, very important to me. And I wish to say that the first time I read your books, I fell to my knees and a bush exploded in flames in front of me, and I found out that's not exactly the way it happened. I had to become a drug addict first, to be quite honest with you. After all of this stuff, I just had nowhere to go with my thoughts or my concerns. And later on, as I found out from my therapist, the only choice I had was to put a needle in my arm or to put a gun to my head. And when I became so desperate, that's when the gift came. We call it in AA, we call it the gift of desperation. And I never thought I would look at those experiences as a gift. It took a long time for me to recognize that. And so, after so many false starts and stops and relapses and back to therapy and treatment and all of that kind of stuff, I decided that I really have to get this God thing. I really, really needed to do it. And so I did. I started off in another church, I transitioned to MCC. And now I am here in this wonderful community of LGBT spirituality. A part of a spirituality where you were one of the primary architects in the infrastructure for all of this to happen.
That's right.
And, you helped me put God and gay in the same sentence. Because before that, I would never put those two in the same sentence. And because of you, things have just become so easy for me to develop my spirituality, to open up. I'm happier than I've ever been in my life. And because of the work like people like you, I think it's not a unique experience to me, but I am certainly thankful. Thank you.